So when I talk about jobs, I don't mean like full-time jobs, you're doing 40 hours a week, this is your life, you know, you've got your qualifications, whatever. I mean like a part-time, as they call like a part-time Saturday job, but I don't literally mean a Saturday job. So the kind of people that this is targeted towards is anyone from 16 to anyone that's probably going through uni and needs a part-time job. So in my life I have had I think 5 part-time jobs, 2 of which I currently have. I'm not going to say the names of anywhere where I work or have worked because I don't want my experiences of certain companies to influence others, and I don't want this to be about the companies, I want it to be about tips, but I'm just going to bring in previous jobs that I've done as examples to kind of illustrate my point. So I have 4 points of things to really consider when choosing a part-time job. This video can be towards anybody, whether you're autistic, have ADHD or not, but it is particularly focused towards autistic people and people with ADHD. But anyone can watch it, so I hope you enjoy and that you find it useful. So my first piece of advice for everyone is to have set hours in your job. So for autistic people, we love routine, whether people like it or not. I think it's kind of almost a guaranteed that you function better on routine. So I think it's really good to have a job where you know what shift you're doing and you're doing the exact same shift each week. So for example, throughout year 13 in the job I held, and I still have, I would work 7:45 to 2:30 every Saturday. That was my shift. I could pick up extra shifts along the way, kind of like one-off shifts if I wanted to, and that was fine. But I think it's really important to have that kind of regular shift, so you know I'm always busy at that time. I can never like do things unless like you get holiday, and I think that really is important because it builds into your weekly routine. I think one of the problems with jobs where you don't get the rota until like 2 weeks in advance and your shift times are constantly changing, your routine is constantly changing and you can't like book things in advance because you might have work or not, and for me that's going to totally throw me off balance. I don't like that. At the job at the moment I do have that kind of thing, but it's only for about 6 to 8 weeks, so it's not catastrophic because I'm on holiday, I literally have nothing to do. But alongside school, and if I was at university, that kind of thing would really stress me out. So that's the kind of first thing I recommend, and probably one of the most important things that you like really should consider in my view. The second thing is to think about the environment where you're working. Hopefully before you take a job somewhere, especially in retail, you've been to the shop a couple of times so you know the sensory experience. If a shop has particularly bright lights and you are very sensitive to bright lights, it's probably really not a good idea to be working there. If you're stressed out when you're a customer, how is it going to be working there? So I think it's really important to work in more chilled environments that are less sensory overload. The third thing to consider is length of shifts. Sometimes you don't know this until you've been offered a job or you're at interview about what the length of the shifts are going to be like. And I think it's something that's important to consider, even though you might be really excited by the fact that you've got a job. If the shifts are just going to be just too long for you, there's no point because you're just going to put yourself through unnecessary stress. I think different people can socialise for different amount of times, be out of the house for different amount of times, so it really depends on you. But if you're someone that really struggles to socialise for say more than 5 hours and the job is one where you're having to do a lot of social communication, it's probably not ideal to be doing an 8-hour shift. You'd probably want to look at like 5 hours or less, and I think that's something that's really important to consider and to think about. And it's okay if a job you get is they're giving you too long of shifts, you can always ask to have shorter ones, and if not, get a different job. Like, there are enough jobs out there that you can afford, I think, to be a bit choosy, because ultimately if you're just going to be miserable, you're just going to think of so many excuses to not work and all sorts of problems, whereas actually if you just had a bit more patience and waited till a more appropriate job came up, then you know you're going to be in a much better place if you had done that. So the fourth point is to learn from previous jobs. I hope this doesn't sound like really obvious, but I think it's really important to take things from previous jobs and volunteering and transfer them into the job that you're next looking for. Like to learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Because if you've had a bad job, you don't want to go back to something like that. And if you've had a really good job, you want to like continue that. So for an example was when I had my first job, I was working 5 till 8 on a Thursday and 12 till 4 on a Sunday, and I hated working bang in the middle of the day on a Sunday and working Thursday night. I just felt like I was never having enough time to do my homework, and even though I was only working for 7 hours, it ended up being like a lot more hours taken out of my week with all the travelling there and back and recovering. So when I decided to get a job in my second year of sixth form, I was like, I'm going to do one shift, a longer shift, and possible I wanted to do it on a Saturday. So I told my employers that I was only free on a Saturday. This was a white lie. I was free on a Sunday, but I didn't want to work on a Sunday, and that's not something I was happy doing. And I was just like, it's just going to have the same problems as before. I'm just going to hate this job. There is no point. I'd rather just say I'm free on a Saturday. And I got my Saturday morning shift and it was brilliant. And I didn't have any of the problems that I was having before at the other job where I was only there for 3 or 4 months. This one I'm still in, and I kept that job for the last year of A-levels. So it kind of showed that by realising what had gone wrong at the other one and solving that problem, it enabled me to stay in a much longer job that I was a lot more happier doing ultimately, and I stayed. I didn't choose to leave like I did in the other one. Tip number 5. Skills. You've got to listen and like respond to what your skill set is. For me, with ADHD, I am an active person. I have a lot of energy. Even though at times at work I'm like, I don't want to do anything, I just want to sit down. At the end of the day, I know deep down I want to be constantly moving. I want to have those sit down periods, but like I want to have like an active job. And so when I look for jobs, I look for things that involve a lot of movement. So with the lifeguarding, I do a lot of setting up things, taking down things, and that's all requiring movement alongside the cleaning. At my other job, I'm selling kids' shoes, so I'm constantly measuring, fitting, getting new shoes from the stock room, coming back and forth. So I'm constantly moving, so I'm playing to my strengths, if that makes sense. I hope I don't sound arrogant doing that, but like I think that's really important too, is to listen and follow to your skill sets. If you're a really sociable person, do a sociable job where you're constantly interacting with people. If you find social interaction hard and you're less comfortable doing it, find a job where you're not having to do as much social interaction. I think that's really important. I think it is just really important to stress again is that there are plenty of jobs and you will get one eventually, so like keep on trying. But if it is just the wrong job for you on initial analysis, don't apply. And if when you get the job and you then realise that it's not the right job for me, it's okay to say no. I've done that a couple of times. Ultimately, you and your mental health and your happiness and experiences are more important than that company, you know? So I think you really need to remember you, and it's not about the company. Don't let them take away your happiness. Just think about you and what you want and what you need. I hope you all have a fabulous week and that you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.